My name's Ambika. I'm a second-year graduate student at UMSI, and today's theme was designing for differences, and I thought it would be fun to focus on designing for differences that we can't see, that aren't very apparent, like anxiety and depression. So the first thing I'd like to start with is something I hear a lot, and that's designing for differences means designing for rare edge cases. So maybe we don't need to care that much because it's actually not that many people, right? But I'm here to tell you that's not true. And there's something I love from Microsoft's Inclusive Design Toolkit that they came out with recently. And they start with someone with one arm. And they say, let's say you're designing for someone like that. At the same time, if you're designing for that person, you're also encompassing designing for the subset of the population who might have a broken arm. And to go even further, you're also designing for someone who's a new parent and one of their arms is taken up by holding a baby. And this is creating this sort of permanent to situational spectrum that's actually encompassing a lot more people than you might initially think. And I thought this idea of the spectrum could also be applied to designing for lifestyle and cognitive differences as well. So if I'm designing for someone with chronic high anxiety, I'm also taking care of a lot of the people who are experiencing a moment of high anxiety while using your product, which actually happens a lot. Like if you're late for something, you're trying to call a lift, you might be feeling a moment of huge anxiety. So what I'm trying to say here is that designing for differences actually means designing for everyone. But there's a challenge in designing for cognitive and lifestyle differences specifically, and that's that not only are they kept invisible, not only can you not see them, they're often kept intentionally hidden. And to give an example of this, let's say you got this letter, and it said, "Dear designers, my lifestyle consists of using my phone and computer too much, and the interruptions are exacerbating my already high anxiety and busy lifestyle. I want to change this habit. Sincerely, I check my email once a minute." Someone like this, someone could have written this letter who's here with us today or sitting right next to you, but it's just not something you would know because we often try to put up a front that we're good and we're doing fine, so nobody would actually know that you're feeling this way. And technology doesn't do a very good job of addressing this anxiety. So to give an example, right now the way the workflow works is when you get a message, you get a notification. And that's just how it is. So for Miss or Mr. I check my email once a minute, this would be really distressing. But what if we changed that narrative? What if by default you never got notifications and only if a message was marked time sensitive, then and only then you would get one? And this is different from what's presented today because you can turn off all notifications, but when I asked around, that actually seems to increase anxiety because you feel like you're missing out. You're like, what do I not know? What if there's an emergency happening? But this simple user option of toggling, of being able to say a message is time sensitive or not, now suddenly you've changed that whole narrative and it's striking a balance. So the way in which the user is controlled is not through what are options, but a lot of times what's not an option and what's not visible. So that time-sensitive thing, it isn't an option right now. A more extreme example is for Netflix. After you've been watching for a while, you'll get this pop-up that says, "Are you still watching?" And they claim it's a way for them to tell you to get outdoors, kids, and stop watching Netflix. But really, this pop-up is so not actionable. I mean, it's so easy to hit yes and keep going that you're probably going to keep going. But what if I told you you have the power to change the message that shows up that you see? So what if instead of just the "Are you still watching?" it says, "Are you sure you want to not do your assignment? Are you sure you want to keep wasting your life away?" And I have a feeling suddenly the no clicks would go up by a lot. But of course, they're not really going to do that because they make money off of your attention. So why would they do that? But I think there's little steps that we can take to at least go in this direction. And one of the spaces, for example, is education. Nobody really learns like this anymore. We found that for most people, attention tends to decrease after 15 to 20 minutes of a lecture. And this isn't for people with attentional disorders, this is just for your everyday person. So something I found that came out recently that I thought was very interesting is this active learning forum where people can just log into a Google Hangout and have a discussion. And it's not really the professor talking at you for a few hours and you're being expected to take notes. You actually all just collaborate on a Google Doc and try to answer the questions together. And I think this is a really great example of bringing some control back to the user and not just subjecting them to an old construct. I really want to end with this quote because I love it, and it's by James Clear. It says, "The way to gain control of your life is to make good habits easy and bad habits hard." I think that's very true, but today's technology doesn't do that. I think it actually makes good habits really hard and bad habits surprisingly easy. I would love to see this, where "Dear, I check my email once a minute, working on it. Sincerely, I designed Gmail." I think that we need more conscientious design from these larger companies to set an example and build back in those user options and user customization that isn't there right now. So we have a responsibility to enable people to not just customize the way they want to use technology, which is how we typically think about it, but also the way they want to limit their use of technology. And I think that is the avenue that we can use to design for these differences that are not apparent, that we can't see, and that we don't even know of. Thank you.